Alright guys, today's topic, the prison is the outlets, and how can I make emotions fleet faster? Two very side topic-y things, and if you're watching this, you probably just saw the pilot, or not, who cares? But those are the two things that have been on my mind. Whew. Oh, I already forgot the first one, so now we just have how to make emotions fleet faster. It's an interesting topic for me. I follow a lot of Alex Hormozy. I think he makes good content. Like, seriously, he's got some of the juiciest nuggets I can imagine. I don't want to hit the bridge. I'm sure I can find a spot over here. I'll just walk into the road. Okay, so how can I make emotions fleet faster? So for me, one of the biggest things that I've dealt with in the past few weeks, I, for the first time in a while, seriously felt like romantical feelings toward a girl for the first time in a while. I'll have an episode on here discussing my entire past so I can document it for my future self. But for now, let's just set the scene and say that some stuff happened. And your boy was not happy. And for that reason, your boy did not find enjoyment in any of these peeps who were quote-unquote available. So, your boy stayed alone. The boy spent a ton of time kind of like straight up just bottling the emotions, like not even caring to try and mess with them or even give them like any sort of light of day. And then for that reason, I ended up just completely chilling and doing my own thing and ignoring pretty much any sign of girl interaction. So, with all that being said, it was a pretty big deal to me when relatively recently I had some sort of these feelings, these desires, these motives, if you will, to meet up with and get to know someone who I'd known for a while, which could have been on me, could have not been on me, but, after being friends with a girl for 2 years and then just being straight up telling her that you like her, the odds, in my opinion, of you re-bridging that gap are pretty dang slim. And I knew that, but for me, it's a matter of I fear regret over failure. Because of me not acting as the greatest failure of all. So, with all that mumbo jumbo kind of baseline out of the way, I went through about how long was that period? It was a Monday night when I called this girl to meet up with her so we could talk about, I literally called her, I was like, yo, I have something really important to tell you, but I won't be able to tell you because my family's coming in town, or something. And then for that reason, she believed me and chose to listen to J-Boy, hang out for a second, stop by, say hi. She expected that I set some shit on fire or completely murked someone. But no, it was just me looking her dead in the face and telling her, I like you, rah, 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 and then explaining all my reasons why. In retrospect, maybe could have played it up more, but who cares? I didn't. Anyways, that all happens. She's in shock. No surprise to me. I honestly totally expected her to freak out more, but she didn't, which was kind of cool. And then there was about a 9-day period of silence, more or less. It was a very dry conversation over text. She plays in a sport, college sport. She tends to be busy a lot during her season. She's currently in her sports season. And for that reason, I should literally sing songs. She's in a season, and for that reason, we never got that treason, and then blah, 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 blah. I shouldn't rap anymore, but we talked over text, and we decided to meet up 9 days after I told her I liked her to get dinner. Cool. We are getting dinner as a quote-unquote date now. But this entire time, this girl has not voiced her opinions on what she thinks of my statements/wishes on being in a relationship. Anyways, so for those 8 or 9 days, I wouldn't even call it hell. It was just like, well, you could call it hell. I was inexperienced in regulating emotions because I had done nothing but bottle them up for 4 to 5 years, if not more. And then out of nowhere, they're just in full swing, and it's like nearly debilitating. To me, it felt like it was debilitating. It was really just like, this thing that I thought I thought I had known how to control, seemed to, almost immediately turn into this beast that I just had no clue how to manage. And it was low-key terrifying. Maybe terrifying is not the word, but it was just very unexpected, and it was very hard to control. And I found that the only way that I could really get through this in my survival paradigm meaning the way you think about the world, was acting despite emotion. So it was, to me, I was feeling something, whether it was happiness, it was sadness, it was desire, it was hatred, it was rage, it was, everything in between. And no matter what was going through my mind, I just had to tell myself that I had to act despite it, because it really did feel like those, these emotions that were coming in, they weren't even me. It felt like it was just a separate being. It felt like I'd spliced my consciousness, and that the only thing coming out of, not even coming out, but the only thing that I could perceive was a group meeting where I was under the control of someone else's desires. And I don't know about you, but if we haven't formally met before, freedom is one of my core virtues and values in life. So when that is threatened in any way, shape, or form, I get very uncomfortable and upset with whoever, I'm about to hit pebbles, with whoever the interlocutor is and whoever the cause of the problem could be. So, needless to say, when it feels like I can't even escape from my own reflections of the past, whether or not they were true, harmful, beneficial, or anything in between, I was pretty dang pissed off with myself because it felt like I was trapped inside of something outside of my control. Hence, the intense cravings for freedom and the desire to fix whatever the heck was going on in my brain. So, with all that being said, I had to remind myself to not only act despite whatever emotions were hitting me, but to actually take the time and, forgive the past, recognize whatever the heck went on is outside of my control. It may be someone else's fault, but it's still my problem. And no matter what, no amount of griping and hatred is going to fix anything. It's only going to hold me back from doing and becoming the future person that I want to really be. So I had to learn to accept, I wouldn't even say accept defeat, but simply just forget about that overall. The freedom of consciousness is so unparalleled and beautiful that most people don't even realize, nor do they want to realize, how much power they truly hold within their brains. Now, mind you, thought creates action, and action creates results, and results materialize into quote-unquote rewards or whatever stimuli you want to associate. But the point is that thought is where it all begins. And if you spend your entire life thinking about the past and whatever negatives occurred, you're only going to find, at least in my experience, only find yourself severely disappointed with something that is outside of your control. Anyways, with all this being said, it may sound like rambling, and it kind of is, but with all this being said, high level, for those 8 to 9 days, I was experiencing a ton of emotional, just internal churning. Shit was blowing up, like, wild. It was nearly debilitating. I found myself, the best coping mechanism that I found was simply reminding myself about all the things that I've gotten through, how much worse it has been, and then simply just being able to tell myself this too shall pass, and also that, I've survived much worse. And only through that was I really able to come to terms and comfort with my current situation, realizing how grateful I can be for everything that I'm given, and on top of that, how much of a blessing it is to feel emotions, and how much of a privilege it is to be able to contemplate one's own life in such a high regard, without needing to worry about the judgment or behaviors of other people before them. Truly beautiful moments, but I found the best coping mechanism was to blast, listen to music that really channeled the emotions, and then remind myself that it was not only artificially induced, but could be revoked at any time. And I would call it music that would heavily invoke these emotions and stimulate myself to react emotionally. And I would couple that kind of stimuli with the music that would make me feel like driven, like really, really good house music was great. That really got me into the zone of just not caring and really enjoying existence for what it is, as well as any kind of like rhyme music or like upbeat jammer music. So, with that being the case, I found that music was my little escape, but at the same time, these emotions were still hitting me in the face. And the biggest thing, which I have yet to mention, silly me, is that I would always remind myself that emotions are fleeting. They are chemical reactions sent in the brain at information. Therefore, eventually, the chemicals run out. Otherwise, you would never achieve homeostasis, and you would likely suffer from some kind of pain, disability, or potential disablement from overuse of certain chemicals. So with us recognizing that emotions are fleeting, shit changes, and there's a ton of other stuff in between, I was able to really not even analyze, I was able to really just ground myself in my own body and understand that it was a storm I had to sit through. A storm of emotions and a storm of me hiding under a rock for the longest time instead of actually facing whatever fears I might tell myself I have. So, with all that being said, that brings me to the main points of this video, which is that emotions are fleeting and that I'm trying to figure out how to make them fleet faster. Don't get me wrong, music was a great way to induce the emotions heavily and try and accelerate their feelings, really amplify their power to then intensify, decrease the duration, increase the impulse of energy release. But at the same time, it didn't work, or at the very least, it was a bit longer than I anticipated. Now, I'm sure there's other ways you can go about this. There's probably substance abuse methods or, other crazy stuff you can think of, but I'm looking for quote-unquote natural ways to knock this out. And that kind of brings me to why I'm talking on this camera in general. I'm using, this form of self-documentation, this form of recording my thoughts as a way to allow myself to best speak what's on my mind and not have my thoughts control me, let alone have any power over me, since I fully expose them and I can accept them for I can accept all the thoughts for what they are in truth, in totality. Happiness and sunshine, and the crowd goes wild, the curtain gets pulled back. That's the pretty basic summary of what the heck's going on. So, with that being said, ideas I have about ways to make emotions fleet faster would be speaking about it, like I'm doing now. Really big fan of physical activity paired with emotionally induced music, aka taking a lot of caffeine, going to the gym, playing hardstyle mix, or whatever the heck you can think of. Maybe you really like white girl music, maybe you're into Taylor Swift, maybe you're into Migos rap. But you play whatever music you want, and you don't speak to anybody. It's just the music, the stimulant, caffeine, your body, and your mind. And then all you do is exercise a muscle group vigorously that is enjoyable. And that could be anything. That could be actually lifting weights, my favorite muscle group to hit, no surprise. Chest and back, very, very fun time. But it could also be something cool, or something, quote unquote productive and high intensity, like water polo, which is something that I really got into recently, or at least I got back into in high stakes. And I really found enjoyment in it because it's a way for me to productively process any kind of emotional discomfort I may have, whether that be through, feelings of rage, feelings of hatred, or the positive ones, feelings of intense desire, feelings of wanting to grow, feelings of insecurity, which then can turn into action. And I think that an activity like water polo, or any kind of sport for that matter, or dance, because I'm in the Indian dance team, are great ways to really naturally ride that wave and then see it all the way out. In terms of the next level, there's high-tier psychotherapy where, someone is labeling the past and attempting to make the emotions hit harder, maybe hit faster. But that part's dangerous because you're subjected to the behaviors and the desires, as well as, the questioning and framing of the past from the eyes of someone else who may never have been there to start with. So, if you're willing to play that risk, it can be worth it. But most people like myself are not. So, other things I can think of for making emotions sleep faster. Obviously, you can drink heavily. You can, I don't know, maybe take some like Adderall or something, and then just crack out some crazy accomplishments. Achieving things, in my opinion, action alleviates anxiety, and most of these quote unquote emotional feelings happen or occur the most, or have the most potency when you're in a feeling of inaction, or when you're in kind of like that observer mode. And it feels like everything you do or everything that happens in your mind is simply a result of you not taking action. So maybe it's like building a puzzle after cracking an Adderall or something ridiculous, but the point is that you get to physically induce action to hopefully alleviate whatever mental discomfort you can think of or are experiencing. Oh, Stefania. Yeah, making emotions sleep faster would be really cool. You know, in a perfect world, if I could push a button and then I could feel all my emotions happen within like half a second and disappear, I think that'd be pretty dang cool. But unfortunately, I think the human brain matter is restricted to some form of time-based processing, and time heals wounds. So, perchance, you can only ramp up the quote-unquote intensity and consumption of emotions, assuming emotions are consumable things that are limited by chemicals in your brain. Assuming this, one can make an argument that you will be limited to experience certain emotional reactions for a certain duration of time. However, there's a chance that you can accelerate this reaction, maybe catalyze it with something along the lines of chemical induced, auditory stimuli induced, physical induced, whatever you can think of, and have it act to a point where your your feelings of the past are experienced in intense portions or intense rates, but they're still controllable and able to be handled within a stature of limitation. Yup. Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for me. I'm headed back to the pad. My battery's about to die, actually. I don't know if you can see that or not. Hopefully you can, but I'll catch you on the flippity flop. Good chat with myself, I suppose. And the conclusion from today is something I already know. Action alleviates anxiety, but at the very least, you got to experience me talking it out. Peace.